And we are back with the fifth and the final segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this final segment, I am going to be continuing on with the ranking teams based off of their young core. And I won't end the list today. I'm actually going to end the list tomorrow, where I talk about the worst teams based off of their young core. So I'm going to just save the worst 5 teams for last and go on with the rest of this list and continue with the teams that are they aren't really great. They aren't bad, but they aren't good either. So we're in that category. You're not bad, but you're not really good either. And the next team that's going to be on this list is number 21, and that belongs to not Ben Simmons, but the Miami Heat. Now, this is probably going to ruffle a lot of people's feathers because Tyler Hero and Jamie Jacquez Jr. are considered fan favorites, and they're also rather popular in the NBA, in the media world, as well as on several other fan pages, as well as NBA pages and ESPN pages. You see their names pop up here and there all the time. And Tyler Hero is 24, Jamie Jacquez Jr., he's 23 years old. And that's the big reason why the young core is at number 21. Because yes, they are still young, but they are only going to be young for 2 years. And really it's going to be starting okay, now you guys are done being young. When are you guys going to start producing and start putting up some more winning numbers for the team? And other young players for the team are Khalil Ware, Nikola Jovic, Pele Larson, and again, these are just bottom feeding names, and the fact that they only have 5 young players is also not helping their roster. So big reason why they're at the ranking right now is because Tyler Hero and Jamie Jacquez Jr., they still have a little bit more to prove, and the number of young players that they have isn't really that great, on top of the fact that the young players that they do have that are actually good aren't going to be young forever, and they're not going to be young for another year or another 2 years. Next team on this list is the Golden State Warriors, and their lineup is very, very, very questionable. They have a lot of guards. They barely have centers. It's perfect for Steve Kerr. If you guys remember from Team USA, Steve Kerr would do nothing but play guards and start guards over centers in certain areas. It was appalling. And Steve Kerr's rotations for the Golden State Warriors, he had Gary Trent playing the 4 for some reason. 6'2" guard playing the 4 makes absolutely zero sense to me, but I digress. And some players from their young core. Podziemski, he's a very good star. He's a very good asset. Kuminga is another very good asset. But aside from those two, the rest are a little bit meh, and they don't really produce all that much for Golden State, and it's not really going to be enough for Golden State unless Steph Curry balls out. So other than Podziemski and Kuminga's 22, Podziemski's 21, those two guys are the only good young players on the team. Podziemski, I believe he led the league in charges drawn, which is whoop-de-doo, yay. And Jonathan Kuminga, he ended up really stepping up once Steve Kerr actually allowed him to gain some minutes. Oh, wrong picture. Well, at least now you know who the next team is. But anyways, the Kuminga, he wasn't getting all that many minutes before until he spoke up to the media and was rewarded minutes from Steve Kerr. And Kuminga was great in the time that he played. Same with Podziemski. They've all been great. But again, the way that they played, while they were still on the Warriors, and the way that the Warriors played last season, it's this team it doesn't really seem like this team is going to go anywhere, especially with their young talent. And the next team on the list is the Kings. And, I can't really say the exact same for the Kings. However, I do think that Keegan Murray has already proven himself to be a very vital asset before Podziemski and Kuminga have. But similar to that team, the rest of the other players on the Kings, they're kind of just, they aren't really all that. They do have Devin Carter, Keon Ellis, Kobe Jones, Orlando Robinson. But aside from really Keegan Murray, I think the rotations, for the young players, is a bit of a weak point. But that's my opinion. And again, the Kings, they still could end up being a solid team. And they, a team that goes super, super far into the postseason. They could easily do that. And the Kings, while they might not have a young squad, they do have De'Aaron and Sabonis. They are relatively young. They aren't young enough to be considered part of a young core, but they are young enough to be considered, relatively young. I'm just going to go ahead and pull up Sabonis's age right now just to make sure that I actually have his age right, and I'm not thinking of something completely different. But yeah, Sabonis, he's 28 years old, and I believe De'Aaron Fox is also around that age as well. And yeah, De'Aaron Fox is 26 years old. So De'Aaron is just over the age of the gap in this, just over the age gap in this for this list. So they do still have a young team, and they do still have a very talented team. So just because they don't really have much of a talented young roster doesn't mean that they aren't going to be able to do much with it. And the next team on this list is the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, they do have a lot of young players, but are those young players good? No. The only one that I think is actually very good is Gary Trent Jr. And even then, he's just a spot-up three-point shooter, a spot-up 3-and-D shooter. So saying that he's good is it's child's play, really. It's not really that big of a deal. You know what I'm saying? So, and A.J. Johnson, they recently acquired A.J. Johnson in the draft, Tyler Smith as well. So they do have a lot of unanswered questions, and because of that, I can't really put them that high because some of these players, they haven't really played an NBA game yet, and they also weren't really hyped up that much considering how they were picked relatively later in the NBA draft. And I mean, aside from Gary Trent Jr. for the Bucks, I don't really see many of these younger players making that much of an impact as as Giannis or Dame or any of the other role players that you have on the team. I don't really expect that from them. And finally, the Denver Nuggets. Now, the Denver Nuggets, they have a lot of young talent. They have Peyton Watson, Darren Holmes, Julian Stother, Christian Braun, Zeke Nnaji, and Jalen Pickett, Hunter Tyson. And yes, that's a lot of names. The problem with those names, nobody really knows them. So that's the problem with those names. They have a very solid starting lineup, and they have very solid players coming off the bench. But in terms of their young players, not a lot of them have a lot of hype generated around them. They aren't really famous. They aren't infamous either, so it doesn't mean that they're really bad. But again, they aren't really drawing that much attention to themselves. Especially especially when you consider all these other teams that are drawing attention to themselves, like the Thunder and the Spurs. Those guys being full of young talented teams and just in full rebuild. Pistons as well. Same thing with the Washington Wizards. All of those teams that are just in full rebuild. And it's just, since the Nuggets aren't in a full rebuild, they don't have to worry about having dozens of talented young players on the team, because especially since you have Jokic. But, we're ranking this off of their young core, and the Nuggets are 25th on this list, and it's really, really bad. So that's it. We're going to stop at 25 for today, and like I said before, I'm going to continue on with this list by tomorrow and giving all the worst teams based off of their young core. So it'll be 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So 5th worst team, 4th worst team. That's what I'm thinking of doing in the next segment. So be sure in the next podcast, excuse me. So be sure to tune into that. But aside from that, thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you have a hot take, a burning question, we're all ears. And if you really want your comment or question to get noticed, go ahead and use Super Chat or just hit the link displayed below the ticker or the link in the description and send in your comments that way, gsmcpodcast.net. Either or helps the show, you can decide. And that's all that I have for you today on this segment. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.